Hello and welcome. This is Pam. Today I'm going to be talking about how to recover from an MS flare and how to prevent the next one. If we haven't met, my name is Pam Bartha. I can talk about this topic because I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis over 35 years ago, and I've been able to live MS free for now 35 years. And we've also supported thousands of people all over the world, helping them to recover from multiple sclerosis and other chronic diseases. So today we're going to be talking about what is causing an MS flare, what are the triggers, how can we prevent MS flares in the future, but most importantly, how can we recover so that we don't have MS flares in the future. So if we haven't met yet, you may not be familiar with the research that I share. Basically, that multiple sclerosis is caused by a parasitic infestation. I have shared a lot of research on this topic. We've also shared many successes of our students that have treated parasites and recovered from multiple sclerosis and other chronic diseases. And maybe you're dealing with some pretty strong symptoms. Maybe you're having a flare. I want to give you some really helpful advice on how to turn it around really quickly. Number one, it's really important to understand what you're dealing with. And this is a parasitic infestation. So go back and you can watch my videos that I've shared, different types of infections that cause MS. It's been linked with things like fungal overgrowth for many years, but then also the Lyme infections, the Lyme co-infections, and more recently, worms. And then I've shared a lot of research on another Babesia or malaria type protozoa. So there are so many different infections that are found really commonly in multiple sclerosis. So this whole talk is going to be based on, we do know what causes MS. And so we're going to do specific measures that are going to be addressing the root cause. Let's first talk about triggers though. Like, why are we, if we have multiple sclerosis, what kind of things will make our symptoms worse? What will give us a flare? So when we're dealing with a parasitic infestation, then if we're going through a lot of stress, especially the emotional stress, I just know from working with many people that these infections, our immune system really responds or reacts to the stress hormones. So when we are under tremendous amounts of stress, immunosuppressive, plus the parasites react to the stress hormones. Of course, a lot of times we're not sleeping. We have a lot of cortisol running through our blood. So those kind of stresses, and it's really the emotional, I say gut-wrenching stresses where it could be relationship, it could be somebody sick, it could be somebody passing away. Those kind of things can definitely bring on a trigger. Other stresses, maybe it's like terrible financial stress that can bring on a car accidents, a physical stress where you have been injured, or maybe you don't have broken bones, but just the trauma from the accident definitely can trigger a flare. But then certain things in our diet can really also trigger a flare. So we know that the parasites, their favorite source of energy is, if you've been listening to my work, you can type in the question box there. What is their favorite source of energy? It is carbohydrates and simple sugars. So when we're eating too many carbs, that is really activating the parasites more. If we're having a lot of caffeine and carbs, we are really stimulating and activating and making the parasites more active. They're producing more poisons, more toxins. And that is all definitely going to result in more activity and more symptoms and a possible flare. If we are really sleep deprived, so maybe we're dealing with insomnia, which is often caused by these parasites, that can be one of the factors that really encourages us to have another flare. So sleep deprivation, high amounts of stress, diet, like high amounts of sugar, and other things like even just being really constipated and having the toxins build up in our intestines. We're not releasing the waste material. Those kind of things can really also cause us to have a higher toxin load So whether it's increased toxins from the activity from the parasites because of what we're eating, or it could be that we're not eliminating their toxins well enough, so they're building up, going back into the blood. Sometimes the liver can't keep up, and then we end up with poisons in our brain. So it's not a mystery when we have a flare. It is, you can start to look back and kind of say, what was different about my life at that time? Was there a stressful event? Was there much less sleep? Was I eating a lot of wrong foods? Maybe drinking too much alcohol? There's all kinds of, it's kind of like when we have multiple sclerosis, we are significantly taxed. Like, think about you're like the camel with the overloaded back. And so then little things like too many grams of carbs, not enough sleep, the stress that comes on with something that happens in your life. Life happens. We can't avoid stress. That's why it's so important to treat the parasites, because when you treat the parasites, then you can manage stress a lot better, because stress, unfortunately, is going to come in our life. It just happens. You'll get through it without having a flare. So those are just some of the different causes for flares. And I should mention too that everything that I share with you, it is not medical advice. I'm not replacing the necessary measures of your healthcare provider. Everything I share with you is like educational purposes only. It is my personal experience in my own health, like when I was diagnosed with MS over 35 years ago, but also in helping many other people to recover from all kinds of chronic diseases. So, and we don't say cure, we say recover, because it's like we can't ever sterilize our body from these parasites, but we can decrease their presence so much inside of us that we feel amazing. And that's how I have been able to live 35 years free of multiple sclerosis. So what I'd like to do is you guys type in your questions in the question box. Tell me if you can relate to when you had a flare, could you remember that, was there something going on in your life that was different, like high stress of some sort, some kind of trauma, accident, family issues, deaths in the family, right? Breaking up relationships, all of those kind of things, they're the ones that are really hard on us, even if we're healthy. So again, in those times, then our immune system is going to be weaker. The parasites will be more active. They produce more poisons, and we end up with a flare. What are the kind of things that we can do to get ourselves out of a MS flare as quickly as possible? So these are proven steps that I'm giving you. Again, not replacing the necessary measures of your doctor. You talk to your doctor about all the things that I'm sharing, right? Like, for example, I'll be sharing one medication, and that you have to make sure that you don't just take medications unless you check with your pharmacist and or your doctor, because there are a lot of negative interactions with things. So number one is diet. That is totally safe. So because we know that all parasites thrive on carbohydrates and simple sugars, then decreasing your carbs significantly down to what we have found the sweet spot to be 30 total grams of carbs, between 30 to 40, but closer to 30 total grams of carbs. It can literally change things so quickly for you, right? It can be within a day or two. That's how significant it is. So it's not I'm getting lower. It's get down into the target zone. You can find all of the Live Disease-Free Diet Guidelines on our website, livediseasefree.com, under research. So in the main menu, it says research. You will find all the guidelines there. So you can start changing your diet. And that is the first step. Now, the second step, I can't say the name of it here on this platform because it is so heavily censored, but I do have other videos. You can go to our website, livediseasefree.com, or you can just even do a Google search on, it's called parasites and treating parasites with oxygen, or parasites and oxygen, live disease free, and you'll find it. That's probably the best place to, and there I talk about this specific oxidizing agent. So we have students that join our program, the Live Disease Free plan, and they're really, really sick, and they are sometimes they're in a flare, and So it's really important, number one, to have guidance through doing things properly and then doing the right steps. So number one is diet. You can start that on day one. Getting your carbs down, that's going to make the parasites more quiet. They're going to produce less poisons, and that's going to help your symptoms turn around very quickly. Number two is the oxidizing enema. So this is where we're using filtered water and we're adding just a safe amount of this oxygen type therapy into the water, and we're doing enemas. And people are literally passing worms like they'll do one enema, let's say in the morning, they might do the next enema the next morning, and they're already starting to pass worms. So we know that people that have multiple sclerosis and other serious chronic neurodegenerative diseases, they are infested with parasites. So worms and protozoa and fungi and bacteria. So you can start clearing some of that out of your large intestine through enemas. You won't be able to reach the small intestine, only the large intestine with an enema. So there's about 20 feet of small intestine, or maybe a little bit more, and then there's 5 feet of large intestine. And so there's a valve between the two, so you will be able to start flushing out parasites out of the large intestine. And some keys about this enema, so this is where I teach students how to do it safely, where they start with small enemas. And like what they'll do is they'll have this filtered water with the oxygen agent in it, and then they will maybe allow 300 mils, and it's lukewarm, it's not cold water because that wouldn't feel very good. And so they allow maybe, 300, 250, they don't measure, but maybe half of the amount of water. They may start with a 500 mil enema, and they let half of that water go into them. And then they feel like they have to have a bowel movement. So then they go over to the bathroom and they release that stool in the toilet. And then they go back and they finish off the last bit of this oxidizing agent water inside of them. And then they are able to hold that for hopefully like 3 minutes. They work up to that. Like at first, it might take a little bit of practice. So then as they're doing that, then the next enema that they do the next day, they will notice that with the first water that comes out, there will be dead worms. One of the students was literally just following the diet, started doing several enemas, and she was able to use her left hand again. And she had much more balance, and she could go up and down ladders with her husband. Now she's actually riding her bike, her Harley Davidson bike again. She was in tears because she thought she had to give it up because she couldn't use her left hand anymore. And that was before she was really even starting to treat seriously with herbs and parasite drugs, etc. So this is the key, is that even for those students that are in our Live Disease-Free plan, they never, ever just start treating when they're feeling horrible. They first do the prep phase, which is the diet and supporting the body. So this is where they're working on daily bowel movements. So you can do that too. You can make sure you're having daily bowel movements. You may need to use some kind of a supplement to help you. Maybe something like oxy powder. You can find that on our website, livediseasefree.com. It works really well with most of our students. Some have severe constipation, and then they might add in extra strength vitality capsules from Dr. Jennifer Daniels. That's a really great extra, but most people don't need that. So they're getting their bowels moving, they're getting rest, right? If you're dealing with a flare, you've got to find a way, whether it's not doing work, whether it's having help with your children, whatever it is, you've got to rest. And of course, drinking filtered water, but the diet is a game changer. Those enemas, you can turn things around within days really quickly. And so if you do the first enema and you feel amazing after it, and then let's say a few hours later, you kind of feel like your stomach is off a little bit, you feel irritable, you feel like you just don't feel good. There's just it's not severe or bad, but it's just like, I felt so good after the enema, and now I'm just not feeling good. You could do another one and you will flush out a worm. So what happens is when the worms start dying, especially at the start, like when we have a lot of them and our immune system is compromised because it's dealing with so much, then when you kill the worms, then the immune system actually goes, oh my gosh, there's a parasite, and it goes after it. And that's what the symptoms are. The symptoms we have in a flare is our immune system. It's the reaction of our immune system to those infections. So this is why you can just know that those oxidizing agents, if you use the right concentration, it's totally safe. You can do 2 if you need to do 2 in a day. We usually do 1 in a day because it is a little bit time consuming. If you are really disabled, then you could do a colonic, and a lot of the hydrotherapists are starting to add this oxidizing agent into the water. So that is very good and helpful and safe. And then we have other students where they might use a board. It's called a colonic board, and they might do at home where they're using, like, they have to lay down and they have to have help. So there's all kinds of ways, and that's what I help students, depending on their level of disability, to be able to do those enemas, because they're so helpful. It can really turn things around really quickly. Diet and those oxidizing enemas. Those are the two front runners. So this is something, the third one is something that you can look more into, you can talk to your doctor about. But whenever they give people an infusion, they usually give them Benadryl and maybe a steroid. And Benadryl is an antihistamine. And all I know is when I was first diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, that was, over 35 years ago, probably getting on to 36 years now. But there were two doctors in the Netherlands that had multiple sclerosis, and they were managing their patients with antihistamine. So they would avoid foods. The patients had to avoid foods they were sensitive to. They had to avoid caffeine. I should say that's another thing. Make sure you're not having caffeine either. So no sugar, no caffeine, and with our diet, you're actually not having any grains, grains. We're not having any grains either. So low carb, no caffeine, no alcohol, right? All of that. Because caffeine will stimulate the parasites, right? And we're wanting to make them quiet. So we don't want to stimulate them. No caffeine, no sugar. Sugar is like putting gas on a fire. That is how much they love sugar. So look into an antihistamine. So I've shared research about mast cell activation disorder. So we know that there's higher histamine in multiple sclerosis and in many other conditions too. And so our mast cells are part of our immune system, which are dealing with parasites for sure. And so when you take an antihistamine and you're lowering the histamine in your body, the antihistamines that make you drowsy can help to sedate the parasites, but also help you to sleep too, because a lot of people have a hard time sleeping when they have a lot of parasites. So for me, when I was first diagnosed with MS, I learned from those two doctors about the antihistamine called Polaramine. It's not available in Canada anymore. It was just over the counter, just a really simple plain Jane first generation, I believe they're called, where they're drowsy form of antihistamine. And that, it's not for everybody, but for me, it was so helpful because I had such terrible insomnia. I had the optic neuritis, I had headaches, I had tingling in my legs. I had terrible, terrible insomnia. And when I took the antihistamine, I started to feel just calm, and it really helped me a lot, to the point where I could sleep. And then when you can sleep, then you can start to heal a little bit. So, but then I've shared tons of other research about how antihistamines, like there's one, clemastine, that one has been shown to promote remyelination. I don't know that it's available anymore. I think there were some adverse effects to that one. It does not remyelinate your nerves, but it does decrease inflammation, and then your body starts to remyelinate nerves. So that's the key. But I'm going to look more into the studies of why they're not selling it. Is it that they don't want us to have it? Is it that helpful? I also found out that antihistamine, it also is an anti-malaria. It has a lot of promise for treating malaria, not maybe a cure by itself, but very helpful. So, and that is very common, like either babesia or malaria. That protozoa is significantly present in a lot of MS by the research. I've done a 6-part series on that. You can find all of these things on our Live Disease Free website under blog. Those are the articles that I write. I always take these videos and give you a condensed version of these videos also, so that you can just go through the videos if you're maybe making supper, or maybe you want to just scan the notes. So that is on Live Disease Free. But if you want to find a specific topic, you can just do a Google search and Live Disease Free and malaria, and you'll find the 6-part series there. So antihistamine can be really helpful for many people, whether maybe you're just starting to use it at night because it's helping you to sleep. So the the active ingredient in Benadryl is actually like an over-the-counter sleep aid. It's got a different brand name for they call it something different for sleep, but you can find the generic active ingredient for Benadryl cheap in the drugstore. Again, check with your pharmacist, check with your doctor if you're taking any medications, because there can always be negative interactions between medications that you're on. And let's say if you want to use an antihistamine to help decrease the inflammation. So an antihistamine can be really helpful, really, really helpful. I'm going to be talking more about that because there's another whole story of, I won't even go into it, but where actually giving people with MS histamine, actually it was life-changing, but that all got shut down in the 1950s or 60s, a long time ago. So, but that's a whole different thing, because it's like, if you increase histamine, then it's an increasing a pathway is the H2 pathway, which actually decreases. It's more the immune modulatory pathway. I'm going to try to keep it simple, but basically it's just promoting immune modulation. And so otherwise you're stuck in this H1 pathway, and that is like pro-inflammatory, and that's with the flares that we're having, the MS attacks. Maybe we want to use a binder. So activated charcoal is an amazing binder. It will absorb toxins in your intestines. You don't want to use it long term because it does bind to your fat soluble vitamins. So just using it in a crisis is fine. Make sure to take it at least 2 to 3 hours away from medications and supplements, because it will bind to medications. So take it away from that. But you could follow the bottle dose, or you can take 5 capsules of activated charcoal. It's something good to have in the home in case you ever have food poisoning. It's just a wonderful, cheap, effective, helpful thing to take. So those are some really important things, and just making sure your bowels are moving. So like as you are getting your carbs down low, making sure your bowels are moving, and then you may use an antihistamine to promote sleep. And then you're using the oxidizing enema to just start to decrease the parasite load in your intestines. And you can turn things around so incredibly quickly. It's just shocking. So the diet is really, really important. And I sound like a broken record, but if you only knew, like if you haven't tried it yet, if you take it really seriously and you check on the Chronometer app and you make sure you're in that target zone of total grams of carbs, not net, but total grams of carbs, down to the 30 to 40 total grams of carbs per day, like you'll be just like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe how much better I feel. And that is such an amazing thing. Like it is so incredibly wonderful that such a simple thing, you don't have to go to a doctor for that. You don't have to buy special food. You just have to avoid certain foods, and it can be life-changing. All right, so I'm going to see if you have any questions. All right, there's a few in here. So hello. Sorry I was late. Technical issues. My mic was not working. I think it's working now because there are no people, nobody's saying that they can't hear me. So that's good. So, hey, how much does the program cost on average? So what you should do if you want to consider working with us, then just watch my masterclass training. Because like you want to know everything. You want to know like what's covered, what are we doing in the program, what is the cost. And so all of those questions are answered in the masterclass, but also in the coach-a-thon. So if you watch the masterclass training, that is an overview. Then you can fill out a form. And then if we feel you're qualified, like we just want to make sure you're ready, that you're at the place where it's like that you get it, it makes sense to you. You have the right mindset, because it is going to be work. It's a lot of work. Like a lot of people don't realize how much work it is. I think, just like a lot of people are just taking 2 parasite drugs. I'm not even going to say the names of them, and they're just winging it, and they're not getting better. They're not getting better at all. And then one lady that I was chatting with today that's going to join the program. She has literally spent $65,000 to $70,000 plus, and nothing's really made a difference because she has never treated the parasites. So watch my masterclass training. I talk about all the steps. The coach-a-thon goes into greater detail, like how are we going to find practitioners? How are we going to get access to treatments? How do we even build a treatment plan? And so then from there, they also share the cost of the program, all the steps we take, the time commitment, and that's all in the coach-a-thon. And then if you feel it's a good fit for you, then you and I are going to chat. Some people just join already, but this is the most cost-effective way to recover from MS and other diseases, because we don't recommend a lot of testing. Most tests are not going to give you enough information for the cost. You're not going to need a lot of supplements because it becomes expensive urine, and actually some supplements will feed the parasites. So the only tests that would be helpful is just a basic comprehensive panel where you're looking to see, your basic blood work that you would get from your GP. But a lot of states in the US, you can actually go through LabCorp or Quest and you can order your own blood work too. So just basic blood work. It is helpful to be energy tested, maybe once. That might be $200. And then, so the blood work, I think, is like $200. The energy testing, where they actually test samples of the parasite drugs to see if you test well for them or not through measuring changes in your energy. So that's biophysics. And then the parasite drugs, if you get them through compounding pharmacies, or in certain countries you can order from online pharmacies, on average they're about $100 per drug per treatment cycle. If you went to a local pharmacy, it might cost you $7,000 for that same old unpatentable drug, which is absolutely ridiculous. So this is why you need coaching through this, because there are so many things we don't need to. So many people that come to me and find me, they're like, man, if I would have found you earlier, I could have saved, like 50 to 70 to 100. Some people have spent $300,000 on their health doing things like stem cell, CCSVI in the past was popular. Sometimes just the testing is like $10,000. So what you need to do is get ready to treat, and treat as quickly as possible. You don't need a lot of supplements, just some basic like multivitamin, mineral from plants, maybe some extra calcium and vitamin D3 if you're not getting enough sunshine, and that's it. Also, the binder is fine. Like if you want to bind some of the toxins, chlorella and activated charcoal, and then the parasite drugs and just the basic tests, and that's it. Oh, and the oxidizing agent. Oh, that's really expensive. That's like $50 and lasts you for 2 months. And that's why we really like it. It is much more helpful, it's much more effective than ozone. Ozone is great, but it's super expensive. You have to keep going back. And then the parasites continue to grow in between your ozone treatments. So that is a problem. And so with this oxidizing agent, you can put pressure on the parasites every hour if you want. When you're ready, you have to first get ready to treat. We want you first feeling stronger before you start treating. So just make sure to check out my masterclass training and then the coach-a-thon, and you'll get all of that information there. So Darren doesn't believe that Lyme is a real thing. And so I would say that Borrelia is a corkscrew-shaped bacteria for sure. And if you listen to, I have a bunch of talks about this spirochete bacteria being found like back in 1911 in the spinal fluid of MS and not of other people, or not of animals and people. So yes, I believe that is a microbe that gets out of balance, but is it the only cause of multiple sclerosis? We have not seen that. The students I work with are infested with bigger worms, and they have probably Borrelia. But the problem is if you get tested for Lyme and then they feel that you have Lyme disease, is that what's causing your biggest, strongest symptoms? Or could it be something else? What if you have 100 worms in you? Like, do you not think that a worm would make a lot more pain and agony and damage in your body than a microscopic bacteria that you can't even see with the naked eye? Yes. So we do believe that, our students, through like our infection survey where we look at symptoms and health, some of our students have worked with Lyme later doctors, so they have had tests done and it's shown that they do have evidence of these infections. So we treat from large to small. We treat worms and fungus and protozoa and bacteria. So we do treat all of it. It's like a weedy lawn. You've got all kinds of different weeds, all kinds of different parasites that get out of control when we're sick. And so that's why it is important to treat all of them. But Is it that MS is caused by Lyme disease? I have not seen that. There's not one student I've worked with that has recovered by only just treating like for a bacteria or for a protozoa. It is multi. I used to think that, maybe it was, the protozoa, but then you see all the big worms coming out and you're like, and they're getting better and better from that. It's like the bigger worms can cause a lot more heartache and grief and pain and agony than a microscopic bacteria. So you said, Darren, you took antibiotics for a year for something that doesn't exist. Well, antibiotics are not effective for chronic Lyme. Even if you have some of the spirochetes that have made it into the central nervous system. So Dr. Alan McDonald has found the spirochetes in the central nervous system of MS patients. Also, there's many studies. You can find them on our website, livediseasefree.com, under research. So yes, the spirochete has been linked with MS for many, many years, since like 1911. But when you have chronic Lyme, the antibiotics don't work and they can make matters worse. Like if you were just bitten by a mosquito or a tick and you have all the acute symptoms of Lyme, that's the time you would use an antibiotic and that will take care of it. But in time, this Borrelia moves into the tissues, it moves out of the blood, it's hiding under biofilms, it moves into the central nervous system. So then no, antibiotics are not going to be helpful. So we treat the big parasites. That way your body will deal with a smaller Lyme, etc. But we like liposomal herbs, which are much more, they're safer, they're more gentle, and they are very effective. But you can't treat Borrelia. If you don't treat the big worms, you'll never clear Borrelia, which causes Lyme, because actually it's been shown by Dr. Alan McDonald that the small nematodes that are in the central nervous system of every MS subject he tested, they're full of Borrelia, which is Lyme, which is the bacteria that causes Lyme disease. So it's really important to understand all of these things because it's challenging to treat. It's challenging to recover if we don't understand what we're dealing with. And with all the research we've done, I believe we are leaders in the world with respect to these different types of parasites, not just in MS, but other diseases, and really understanding what we're up against and how to treat. We call it a layering of therapies approach. And Darren, you said stress does not cause disease. No, but if you are under chronic stress all the time, then what happens is it is definitely immune suppressive. It suppresses your immune system, so then it does wear you down. So people that do not have a lot of stress, if they live a healthy lifestyle, versus somebody who has tons of stress all the time, is definitely hard on us. But stress is part of life, and so it is really important to understand that. And so when we exercise and we eat right, and we definitely take, nutritional supplements to fill in what's missing from our diet, and we manage the microbes, we can handle the stress. And I think the big factor, what we're missing, is that most of us, we don't know that we're dealing with parasites. Like that lady I was talking to today, she never heard of that before. And so they're doing all these other things and spending thousands of dollars working with integrated practitioners and not treating the root cause. And that is why they're not getting better. But if you treat the root cause, if you restore enough balance, you can handle the stresses of life. All right. So don't you think MS could be cured by just living off-grid, drinking spring water, eating meat and organic fruit and low toxin foods? I really don't believe so. There's lots of people that I've talked to that, they really, let's say they don't have a lot of stress and they eat really healthy and they exercise and they don't have a lot of stress. They will often go 5 years or 7 years before they end up getting a flare. So the problem is, even when you live off grid, there's going to be stress. Like you might have a bear, rummaging through your stuff there's always going to be things that happen in life. And so The parasites, if you leave them in your body, they will continue to reproduce. They will continue to multiply and grow. They will continue to steal your nutrition. And you'll just age quicker and you will become disabled, maybe not as quickly when you actually don't, like when you eat really healthy, low carb and have minimal stress, you can definitely slow it down. But that's what's taking us out at the end of our life, is that we're really, really infested with microbes. Like the people that live in the care homes, like you go through the care homes, I love them. I love the people. I love the people that are supporting them, but it smells like poop, like the whole, and they're all on Depends. That's because their gut microbes, that's the base camp of the problem. But by the time they're very, very disabled, it has moved into their central nervous system. It's moved all throughout the body. All right. And hello, Will. What about an ocular migraine? Well, it's been shown that migraines are, like, very often migraines are associated with lesions in the central nervous system. And so that a lesion, if it is a lesion, then definitely, so an ocular migraine, that is to do with your eyes. So we know that these microbes do get into the central nervous system. That is what these lesions are. That's what I've shared, I've done a talk on how many different parasites can cause lesions in the central nervous system. So that is something that's known in science, but somehow our neurologists don't know that. I don't know why. So 30 grams of carbs per day makes you feel miserable. Body literally runs on glucose. Well, actually that's not true, because when you have the 30 total grams of carbs per day, you'll notice that your blood sugar is normal. Like our students have their blood work done before they do any kind of parasite cleanses. So they get their blood work done, they're following the diet, their blood glucose is in the normal range. So it is not going to make you feel miserable at all. It actually makes people feel really great. All right. And the parasites will thrive on honey also. So if you eat, and green tea, definitely the caffeine in the green tea, I would avoid it. Definitely would not do that when you have parasites. So Joey, have your students ever used IV artemisinin? Is it available at some integrative? So it is available. It is, like with all of these things, you have to use the proper dosage for it to be effective. So for example, if you're dealing with malaria, or I would say malaria, that's the CDC will have that on their website, that the IV artemisinin, it's called artesunate, that it is helpful for treating malaria. That's what they feel. But malaria is you just have to be careful, because people herx. Like when people are treated, when malaria is treated, people can herx a lot. So, but artemisinin IV, which is artesunate, is the most preferred, according to the CDC, for treating certain protozoa. But again, we don't focus on, like, protozoa are going to be a lot smaller than worms. And so if you just focus on protozoa, or you just focus on Borrelia, you're not going to get well. Like you need to treat large and small and fungus, like all of it together. And so if you just do like something that's quite expensive and quite not drastic, but it's more invasive than certain herbs would be, then it's not long lasting, because you haven't dealt with some of the bigger problems. Are your programs international? Yes, they are. We have students from all over the world. Last question. Thank you so much, Joey, for your kind words. You've learned so much. I hope you have. Like, that's why I did this, because it breaks my heart. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis 35 years ago, and nothing has really changed. And people, they get these flares, the MS flares, they end up feeling so horrible. They end up in the hospital. They're on steroids. They're suffering. They lose vision. They start to lose more mobility. And these simple things that I've shared, by just decreasing your carbs tremendously, and making sure that you're doing all the other things like sleep and rest, and you can take a binder, but those oxidizing enemas, they are just life-changing. And just start with small ones, and then also look into the antihistamine, because that is that has been like for 40 years. There's so much behind that can also be something, because they give that to us when we have an infusion, right? So interesting. So yeah, and doctors knew about this 40 years ago from the Netherlands. Dr. Maas, M-A-A-S, a mother and her daughter, they were both neurologists. I don't even know if they're still alive, but that was the first thing that started my journey to recovery, was just using antihistamines, being able to sleep again, just feeling a little bit more. I was like vibrating from these parasites, just super, super high inflammation. And it just really calmed down my system. Again, you just have to, like some people, it might be too strong, an antihistamine, right? But for a lot, it is going to be very helpful. And that's been shown because they do give that to people with MS. In the Live Disease-Free plan, we're teaching you how to play an active role in your healthcare, in your recovery, so that once you recover, you can make sure you never end up in this position again. And this relates to, sometimes we have children and we have spouses. And so all of this information is not just for MS, but it is for our whole family, for our children. We can assess them. We can help build up their healthy microbiome so that we can teach them these principles, right? And then there are so many other factors in our environment that we're not even aware of today. And I'm not going to say the names because they're heavily censored. There's stuff they're spraying in our skies, and it is scientifically documented. And that is affecting our metal concentrations in our body. The Wi-Fi, the parasites, this has been shown in science, they absorb a lot of metals. And then we have all of this wireless radiation that they're almost like an antenna inside of us, and it really impacts them. So they're getting impacted more by the Wi-Fi than even we are. So that makes them more virulent also. So it is important to, yes, build a healthy lifestyle and do heavy metal detoxes and possibly liver gallbladder flushes and look for hidden dental infections, like all of these things, and constantly detoxing from the environment that we're in, unfortunately, in this day and age that we're living, and building up the healthy microbes and just living our life like I have been. I have just had a new grandson. That's why I wasn't here last week. So now we have 8 grandchildren, 10 years and younger, which is so much fun. And I got back into horses again. And I just thank God, because it could have been so different. I believe that it's by the grace of God I learned all of this. I work really hard. I do a ton of research. Check out our website, livediseasefree.com. You'll find like a huge resource. When you go through that, you'll be like blown away with everything that I pulled together. Again, I believe it's by the grace of God, but it has been work. So I'm going to let you guys go, and I will be back next week. Take care and bye-bye for now. Actually, I won't be back next week. I'll be back the week after. All right. Hope you have a wonderful week. Take care and bye-bye for now.